Hey now, what is going on, dudes? ModzvilleUSA here, back with another video. And today we're going to be installing an OpenXenium mod chip into a 1.6 original Xbox. And we also have this nice little board here, which will help us rebuild the LPC header without having to wire it up and all that nonsense. I've already done 2 of these today. These chips are really cool. I really like these chips. Very nice modern chip for you. And yeah, dudes, it's got its own operating system built into this chip. If you press eject, you can boot into it, tweak a bunch of settings, install a BIOS, do whatever. It's pretty cool. It's got the ability to have one of those LCD screens if that's something you're interested in and something you can get your hands on. I don't know where you're going to get one of those in the modern age, but yeah, it's very cool. I got these off a guy from eBay who was super nice. I'll leave a link to his listing. And then these LPC boards, he sells those. He was sold out. I got these from Chimeric Systems. Shipping took about a week, and he sent it like a letter, like stamped letter, nice and easy, nice and cheap, along with instructions. These are about 5, and these were taped to a piece of paper with instructions. Pretty clever little setup there. I can dig it. Okay, so it doesn't recommend tinning any of these up beforehand. We're going to want to install this as well as this at the exact same time, just to keep it all, make sure everything flows properly. I'm just going to hit these with a fiberglass pen. This is optional, but we want to make sure these contacts are good. The hardest part about the little LPC Rebuild board, I'm gonna flux this up while I'm in here too. Hardest thing about this little LPC board is making sure that the solder joints are connected to the LPC pads on the board here. Connecting everything else is quite easy, but you know, you got to make sure you get in there and actually connect it to the board, and it's not quite visible, nor is it. It's the trickiest part, in my opinion, of installing these boards, is knowing that these pin headers are connected to the board properly. But if you go ahead and do that in advance, then fitting the LPC board around those pins could be a bit of a problem because it's a pretty snug fit. So flux it up, make sure you flux it, and we're going to try to maximize the best bet of connecting it. Oh, and I didn't really explain that. Let me just pull this off and show you. Alright, so up here, these are our AV jacks. We're going the smaller size of the pin, go in here, and we're going to leave these top 2 holes open. You might end up with a pin header that's too shorter. These top 2 ones are only needed for the LCD. So depending on who you get it from, you might get a shorter pin header. I know the Aladdin, it's the top 2 rows are open. But yeah, with this build, these chips, it's just the one row. Okay, so we got that. We tape it down so it stays nice and clean there. My camera's going a little crazy. Got some screen tearing going on. And know what the deal with that is. But alright, so we flipped it over and it goes like this. I like to line it up. You got this little corner pad here. That's going to go to that screw hole there. It's going to be grounded. That's right. So when you're lining this up, we're going to tape it as well temporarily. Get it lined up with the pins first here. But then you just want to make sure that all these pads that are going to be soldered, you just want to make sure that the joints we're soldering to are nice and accessible. Because if it's at a bit of an angle, you might end up with those pads being under the board, which you can work around, but you know, it'd be a bit of a pain in the ass. You want to get it right. Get things right, you know? Removing something like this and resetting it is no fun. Now everything is lined up nice and proper here. Whoa. Everything's lined up. I'm going to get my camera situated. Okay. I believe screen tearing has been solved. And we got a nice tight shot on that pin header there. So what we're going to do, the way I like to do it, let me explain it before I do it. I like to touch my iron to the actual board, to the pads on the board and the pin, and then feed the solder to the pin and the pad on the LPC, on the LPC Rebuild little daughter board here. So we're going to touch it to the pad, to the pin and the pad on the motherboard itself, and then feed it to the pin. That's a pretty nice joint there. You want to heat up the pad on the board fairly decently. You really want to make sure it makes that connection. And you can kind of see when it doesn't, but sometimes it's a bit mysterious. And I'll tell you right now, if you end up finishing up your soldering here and then putting it back together and getting your Xbox is just fragging out, don't worry, it's not a big deal. Basically, as that happened to me on my first one, if that happens, just reflow these specifically. Just go back over your work, flux it back up, go over your connections there. It's just something's not connected properly, and it's likely due to just the pin header to the pads on the motherboard itself. It's a little difficult to spot. You can get in there and actually see it. But yeah, that's it. Just touch the iron to the pin and the pads on the motherboard. Feed it in from the top. Inspect your work at an angle. Make sure it's connected to the board, and you should be good to go. Whoa! Tripped out again. Well, I want to connect the other side of these off camera. It's the same thing. just a little tough to get in there with the camera itself. So I'm gonna get those connected, and at this point too, it's locked in. You can pull that up, and then we'll get a shot of the rest of the connections here. Okay, is it screen tearing? No. So I got these all these pads soldered up. Some of them aren't connected to pin headers. Just make sure their joints are good. If I eyeballed it, it seems good. It seems good. Everything seems fine. Now it's just a matter of flexing up the rest. Making sure we get good connections. Beautiful. Now, let's do this right here. This is your, I believe it's D0 to ground. That is controlled with this here, so we don't need to run a wire, which is nice and convenient. There's a pad here. Yeah, these are nice. First time using one of these rebuild boards today. And I gotta say, it's pretty convenient. Looks a whole lot cleaner too. There's really no good way to make those to make the wire rebuilds look good. You get your wires as tight as possible, but it's still not really appealing to the eye. Okay, and now we've got this little jumper pad here. We're gonna want to bridge that. And what that does, it will enable this. So here's D0, here's ground. When we enable this, D0 is attached to ground. Now, if you're not using one of these rebuild boards, you would just solder this to that. There's an option on the OpenXenium to patch these up right here. There's this 1.6 line, and there's D0 to ground if you solder those two together. But over the years, from all I've heard, it's better to just use D0 to ground on the motherboard itself as opposed to mod chips. Maybe this one's better at handling it, but one or the other. I prefer this. Might as well just do it on here as opposed to jumping a wire on the mod chip itself. But one or the other should be fine. It's up to you. I haven't tried both. I haven't tried double D0 to ground, but I wouldn't recommend it. Might be fine. Might cancel itself out. Might make something explode. I really don't know. Never tried it. Cool. Let's just make sure we didn't miss a pad here. Just eyeball your joints. Make sure. Looks like everything's connected. One of these joints looks like I can do a little bit better of a job. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to put this back together. And we're going to check it out on the TV and get it set up on the OpenXenium OS that it boots to. Very nice. Alright, so one of the nice things about this mod chip here, you can go ahead and test it up without a DVD drive, hard drive, or anything. It will boot to the Xenium menu. If none of that, well, by default, that's where it's going to boot until we set it up. So go ahead, test it out. You should see a red light, yellow light. And if you have your AV cables plugged in, you will get into this Xenium menu here. Now it's gonna keep booting to this menu until we set up at least one BIOS, and then set it, if we want it to boot to say Evo X, we gotta set that to be where it boots to and set up instant boot. And once we do that, power button is gonna boot to Evo X, and if we wanna get back into this menu and dick around, we can hit eject when it's off. We'll boot back here, and you can have multiple BIOSes installed in this launch menu here. If you want to toggle between them for some reason, you got different BIOSes for different things. So you're running a 128 RAM mod, you would probably want to have access to different BIOS files, etc. So this is pretty sweet. I might actually chuck one of these in my Halo edition. It's very feature rich here. I kind of like this. So I want to get this set up with my 2 terabyte hard drive that's already pre-configured, and I've got a master that I've duplicated, and it's got BIOS files on it. So I want to get that hooked up along with a DVD drive and run through the BIOS installation with you guys. All right. If you're not booting up at this point when you're testing your chip, just take it apart, flip it back over, and just reflow all your solder joints there. Just something's not making a proper contact. Double check all of that, reflux it, reflow it, solder it up, test it. If it's good, scrub down that flux. If not, reflow it again. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it figured out. All right. Good luck. Okay, so I've got my hard drive, my DVD drive hooked up. This has been cloned already from like a fully set up hard drive. Not going from scratch, but I've got some solutions for you, those of you that are. But anyway, let's start with a power on here. And here we are. It kind of does like a fast reset when you turn it on. And we are in the Xenium menu. Now, I've already have BIOS files stored on this hard drive, so it's gonna be a breeze for me to get this all set up. However, I'm assuming that you do not. So I want to leave a pack of BIOS files sorted for 1.6 or pre 1.6, and they're just going to be the stock, like what's on a Hexen boot disk. Now, I don't know if you can definitely FTP, so you're gonna have to either FTP those over to your E drive on your hard drive, or you're going to need, you might be able to get away with burning them onto a disk and installing them that way. So one or the other. Help each other out in the comments, and I will do the same. But for me, since I already have them, I'm going launch menu, going add new item, I'm going flash, and then I got my E drive right there. So yeah, it just doesn't look like the disk drive showing up, maybe because there's nothing in it. This console doesn't even have a working disk drive at the moment anyway. So we got the E drive here, so I'm gonna go A, and then I've got this Hexens folder. This is what my Hexen, I believe this was installed just from running a Hexen boot disk, or I put this on here at some point, I forget. But in here we got the BIOSes. That's what I'm gonna share with you dudes. Got one for Sharp. Let's go BIOS bin. We don't know what BIOS bin is. It's something I was installing. But since I've got a 1.6, I am going, any of these ones with a 1.6 should be for 1.6. So yeah, there's this 1.6 plus. I'm going Evox M8 Plus version 1.6. Boom. Alright, and then we go, I'm just gonna go start, or scroll down to done, hit A. And, I don't know, let's go red. And there we go, we got it right there. And then I'm gonna go set default item. Yes. We're gonna go back. Then we're gonna go to settings. And Xenium settings. And I'm gonna go to instant boot. And quick boot. Sounds good to me. Now, I wasn't able to find much information about the current Xenium menu online, so I've just been kind of playing around, figuring it out as I go. So I'm not the best person to ask about how this works, but I figured out how to make it work for me, get a BIOS installed and all set up. So now that we've got that set up, we're gonna choose power here. We'll power it back on. And as you can see, we got the Evo X logo in the corner there. And now if we want to, say, tweak those settings, add more BIOS files to choose from, etc., turn it off, hit eject. And if we hit eject, we're back in the Xenium menu. So we can set up this launch menu to have a whole bunch of BIOSes, which is pretty sweet. But for now, just a modded Xbox that boots with Evo X. Good enough for me, huh? And that's it. Enjoy your new mod chip. Much better than an Aladdin. Not much more expensive. And they're made here in America, which is very nice. Get it nice and quick so you don't have to wait for a crappier mod chip to show up from China, especially since it's essentially pretty much the same price, pretty similar pricing. So 10 out of 10, would install again. Good shit, good shit. Enjoy, leave a like. Oh, bye-bye. Back, let's say what to do.